Good evening, gentlemen.
How's it going?
I'm doing great, man. It's nighttime. Daryl, how are you, man? Daryl Hudson.
I'm going to predict that Daryl's going to be a good Thursday night guest. He's not a Friday morning guest. I think he's definitely a Thursday evening one, if that means anything anymore.
Daryl, a little context. We have two reserved show spots. It's Thursday night and it's Friday morning. Without us saying a thing, our guests have naturally found the right slot for them, right? Like the Thursday night ones are a little bit more...
Sometimes there's
spirited.
Drinks. Sometimes there's cannabis. It's a different mix.
And Friday mornings tends to be like a Friday morning type thing. It's Friday, so everyone's in a great mood. It's really upbeat and everything, but it might be a little bit more clinical.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of a cup of coffee kind of morning.
Yeah.
You know, like
yeah. Yeah, we will do all of that.
Why not?
So Daryl, we teed you up before this, and I kind of just want to like laugh about that for a second, because the funny part about, we normally ask guests, we're like, hey, we're going to ask you how you got here, and you can kind of interpret that however you want. And, it always leads to what they're doing right now, but people like you, and there's only been a couple of them, that are so all over the place in terms of what you are proficiently tackling. That's a harder question to answer, and I just wanted to like laugh about that for a second.
Don't throw it back at us either, man. We're gonna know where you go.
Yeah, but like you are a guy of many hats.
Podcast,
right.
We could cover a lot of different topics.
We say an hour.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, my name's Dr. Dwight Daryl Hudson. I have a PhD in molecular biology and genetics that I got from the University of Guelph, specifically studying plants and plant genetics, thinking, hey, maybe one day I'll be able to study cannabis.
Like any aspiring teenager would say, right? Yeah.
Seems like something a lot of people, PhD candidates say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even my first year of university, people would be like, why plants? And I'd be like, oh, I'm going to grow the best weed ever.
I'm going to grow the best weed
the world has ever seen. Laugh, and then it just so happened that in Canada, right as I finished my postdoc, they announced a legal cannabis program for commercial companies.
Wow.
And I applied with a small group of guys in a little barn, and we got the first license in Canada. And so that did spawn a career in the cannabis space, if you will.
That is amazing timing.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you that, Tom.
That is fucking amazing timing. It also sounds like a 90s like buddy comedy. Like where
I'm sure, I'm
gonna get a doctor in weed.
At one point I thought it would be a serious movie they might make about it, but it's for sure a comedy. If you look back, everything from cutting off the tip of my finger in a joint rolling machine to getting raided by the DEA and no charges, everything given back. So, there's been many, many stories over the years. But really what it did is it made me an expert in sort of studying natural molecules and how we can extract them and formulate them and bring them to market. Whether that's, supplement nutraceutical market, pharmaceutical market, or even, edible health market. So I do a lot of work with plants, but also with fungi. And that's, I think, where my passion has sort of shifted over the years, is a little bit more towards the fungi, just because it's so unexplored, if you will. And there's a plethora of very interesting medical molecules, such as psilocybin, which I've been working with for many years now.
And it is funny to me that a lot of people who really so I've owned head shop since 2002, right? So I've been in the cannabis like accessory world, but that's heavily related to the cannabis itself world since then. And I've seen a lot of companies come and go, and a lot of that green rush, especially in particular, the people who stuck through that and then kept going and got more serious, it's like they just were gravitating towards psilocybin. It feels like a natural second act. And I just think that's interesting because I see it over and over.
I kind of wish that it hadn't been, because, as you said, the green rush was just that. It was a rush to essentially lie to shareholders and convince them that cannabis farms were like gold mines that spewed gold based on square footage. And unfortunately, it's farming, and the product matters at the end of the day.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it took,
weird how that works.
Yeah, it took many years for supply and demand economics to start to kick in here in Canada. It's been, a decade. And
It's
now
been what,
it's hit
20
the bottom, and it's starting to come back out. Like, I think we've got one publicly traded company here in Canada that's actually profitable.
Oh wow.
One. Right. But how many have already gone bankrupt or
yeah,
upwards
all of them.
of 10
Yeah,
billion
it's crazy.
dollars? Like, I don't know how you can lose $10 billion and not make money on weed, because
that is pretty unbelievable.
That is the worst drug dealer in the world right there.
Yeah,
Is what that is.
Seriously.
That is.
Yeah.
But
and
look
you
at
still
20
get speaking engagements. But anyways.
Yeah, exactly. I'm from the Bay Area originally, California, and like, how many years ago did they legalize it? Almost 30, probably. And they still have a huge black market because they still can't figure this shit out. Like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? The state's still fucked up. It hasn't figured itself out. It's been decades. Like, what are you?
So for me, it was always about fighting this war on drugs, if you will. And I saw the writing on the wall early in my career that we weren't going to be able to fight it by just saying, fuck the police and all that shit, right? The only way we were going to fight it was to let those people inside. And so even though from the very beginning, I growing weed in a barn built in 1856, we had 4 little flowering rooms, probably growing up for 300 people. Next thing you know, we were valued at like $600 million, right? So it's completely unrealistic. But that was the means to an end, if you will. And like, I knew, as you said, that the people that stick around will be the lifers, and the rest of them, sharks will be sharks. They don't, for sure. These guys, they do it over and over. They did it with
they see it and they're out.
Cannabis was just another game to them. It had nothing to do with the product.
I for years I'd gone to Champs, the big industry trade show, right? And one year I remember seeing a dude with like penny loafer type shoes on, no socks, but still wearing a suit with no tie, and I was like, oh fuck, damn it.
Was that a Don Johnson kind of moment from Miami Vice?
Like, to be honest, there was a heyday when they first sort of legalized down there, the cannabis cops in Denver and stuff.
Oh yeah, I was at the first one in Denver. That thing was legit,
right? Like, such good parties, and then all of a sudden corporate came, and it was like there was not even weed allowed at the parties, at least in Canada, right? Like, you have a weed party with booze, and it's a bunch of
that feels really counter.
That's weird, man.
Yeah. It was super weird, man, and it took a dive, so like, as those unfortunately, as those cannabis stocks started to hit the shitter, many people just jumped ship to psychedelics.
But you know what, it's been,
but was that corporate chasing it, or was that
well, maybe we'll get to that, but
well, we had Simeon on this show. He runs JLS Fund. It's
Simeon's
the biggest
investor in my
company. That's right. I forgot you guys are. Yeah, exactly. So Simeon,
and I love all of the stuff that they do. They've been very supportive of this industry, and so I don't want to lump them in with
no. But I certainly don't. Yeah,
converted their cannabis company into a psilocybin company, and many of them tried to tell the same story. We're just going to cultivate 600,000 square feet of mushrooms, and it's like, wait a minute, that's enough for the whole planet for 10 years. Right? So it's not the same product, right?
It's not the square footage problem.
So people didn't really get that. And just to back up, it was very interesting how I kind of came to psilocybin as a medicine, exposed to it as a teenager, very influential in my life and my path, but didn't really view it as this healing tool that it really can be for so many people. The first day we opened our cannabis farm in Canada, the veterans had already won a court case prior to that where their cannabis was covered by the government. So obviously now there's a legal supply. They came rushing, and we had the best stuff.
Seems like a terrible day of news for those guys. What?
Wait, it's covered?
From a corporate standpoint, it was like, oh, great, free clients. Like, we can bank on X amount per day, like every day for these guys, right? But from a like compassionate medical perspective, I was like, is this really helping? Like, do you really need 10 grams a day? You know, like there's a lot of like questions that went into it. So I started really working directly with these guys and trying to figure out, you know, is there differences between the strains, which there obviously was. You know, is it actually helping them? And at the end of the day, it does help a lot of people. But for me, it seemed like it was more like a bit of a Band-Aid. You know, it's helping people get through the day. It was stopping the bleeding and the trauma from coming out, but it wasn't healing and curing people to the point they were leaving that past behind and then moving on. And then certain individuals would go away, do these psychedelic retreats, whether that was Peru, Mexico, Jamaica, you know, and they'd come back and just be different and like start a roofing company, and their cannabis intake would decrease significantly. And you know, like it's like, holy, well, there's really something to this, right? So we started studying it in Jamaica where it was legal. Started a retreat down there and realized really fast that a lot of people didn't want to do the macrodose for a lot of reasons. Military,
sure, there's a
background, just fear.
Sure.
So we really started digging into the microdose and seeing, you know, can we get similar results? And the answer is no, it's not the same, but it does really help a lot of people. And so we started studying it on a molecular level and trying to figure out how we could potentiate that and shift sort of the downstream signaling from the serotonin receptor itself to make it work better, if you will, especially at the low dose.
A little nitrous for that serotonin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, because what we ended up coming across was these TRP channels. So they're transient receptor potential ion channels that move ions around. So calcium primarily is a very strong secondary messenger in serotonin signal.
Oh,
and so by potentiating these receptors, you can actually stimulate the calcium, which is basically the nitrous.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
And so even at a high dose, these TRPs can potentiate or accentuate the trip, you know, make it more visual, less visual.
Oh, wow.
Depending on which ones you're taking and in what combination. So that was a very interesting discovery that we started really digging into to try and, again, potentiate the effects of the psilocybin without causing intoxication, without causing hallucinations or anything that, you know, the current medical establishment is going to view as extremely negative. Even though there's a ton of medications that are prescribed to you that if you took a handful of, you would, you know, trip or worse. Right. So it's not like they're outside of an understanding of how these medicines can be prescribed, but the current way that most companies are looking at utilizing these substances is very high doses. Tons of therapy, tons of medical oversight, you know, 6 to 8 weeks of prep and integration. It's going to cost a lot. Insurance isn't going to cover it because they have no idea about this type of treatment. Right. Whereas it didn't matter how many retreats I ever ran, we would never touch the population, you know, even make a dent in the people that actually need this. And so that was the reason that we decided to start a pharmaceutical company and go out and raise money and, you know, sort of make it legit, if you will. As soon as that deck started floating around, a bunch of cannabis people jumped ship. And, you know, like literally people called after they went public and were like, thank you so much for that deck. You know, we stole everything. But, you know, again, it is what it is. We now have what I would say is, you know, a lot more legitimacy to the psychedelic industry, even though that bubble wasn't even a bubble. It was a blip. You know, it burst so fast for a lot of these companies because they did not understand that they were getting into drug development, which is a long, arduous, painstaking, expensive, and quite frankly, horrible process. Like, you know, they're making me kill a shit ton of animals just to prove that these natural molecules I'm using that have been used for thousands of years are safe. But it's like, it's the hoops that you have to jump through. So fast forward to today, we're now, you know, sponsored by 2 naval commanders, have a trial planned at Walter Reed.
Wow.
The Department of Defense is giving out money for psychedelic trials. Like,
it's crazy, isn't it?
What world are we living in? You know what I mean? As much as there's all this other crazy nonsense going on, there's there's a crack in the door there with the current administration that I'm hoping we can kick right open.
Kick open, yeah. It's funny. Manifesting is a funny thing, isn't it? Like Tom and I follow these weird cosmic trends, right? So last week we had Louise Hecker on, right? She did that
amazing
whole psilocybin in lung and tissue, was it? That extended lifespan of those cells by 50%, right? She's a legit scientist. Like
she had no interest in psilocybin until a friend pestered the hell out of her about it.
She's a true academic, so she came into this literally out of scientific curiosity, full stop. She's a fibrotic expert, and she started to notice some corollaries between fibrotic specific diseases and psilocybin and the mechanisms of action that it triggers. And she fucking literally stepped in a fucking gold mine. I think. I mean, that's TBD.
LinkedIn was exploding with her article.
Yeah,
and then she's nice enough to say, hey, thank you.
But then the week before that was Dr. Jeff Tarrant from the telepathy tapes, and he's a legit neuroscience scientist, and he's talking about psychedelics and the effect
and
they have,
psychic abilities and all sorts of weird shit. Yeah,
it's just funny that there's there are people out there really discovering this right now, and that's awesome to me.
I'm going to corroborate that data 100%. We saw that in our lab years ago. There's a reason that I didn't publish it. There's because in science there's this whole publish or perish sort of thing that has been created is very shitty. And nobody really reads most of the papers unless they get some sort of big press thing like this.
Sure.
Which, to be honest, is not always beneficial to that academic's career. So there's a lot to be said for trade secrets, if you will.
I see.
And trying to figure out how to just get this stuff out there without necessarily waving what I would call the red flag. Because as much as psilocybin probably is a great longevity product, it's very interesting when we put it on cells of different types of cells. On most of the cell cultures, it actually sped up the cell cycle.
Wow.
So it made them grow faster, which you wouldn't think is necessarily
a good thing. Yeah.
But when we started including other molecules, and I'm talking these TRP receptors, which most of them come from spices. So cinnamon, nutmeg, turmeric, cayenne pepper, clove, all of these medicinal herbs that we've known for years actually have all these medical benefits. Now we can isolate those individual molecules out of them, test them, on these tissue culture cells and stuff, and see what happens. And it was extremely interesting because when we started putting things on like curcumin with psilocybin, it was increasing DNA repair, now slowing the cell growth versus speeding the cell growth. All of the sorts of very interesting things. So it depends which cells we were looking at and which combinations of products. So you can think as a human, you've got this diet going on. So you're not just getting psilocybin. But again, maybe if you're imbalanced, psilocybin does the opposite and it actually speeds up your cells. Right.
That's
so
interesting.
There's a lot of work to be done there. But when it comes to looking at psilocybin as an anti-inflammatory, which is what we found, we were able to really potentiate the anti-inflammatory effects and look at these sort of basic but broad spectrum inflammatory cytokines that are underlying many, many human diseases, especially mental health and neurodegenerative disease. We see a downregulation of those with psilocybin. And so that's with psilocybin extract as well as the pure compounds. So when we combine it with some of these other molecules, we were able to potentiate that and really increase the sort of anti-inflammatory effect of psilocybin, which is why the product works so well.
That is interesting. So I'm not a scientist or a doctor or anything, so I pardon the naivete here, but what is it about these things? And I guess particularly in your case, in this conversation, psilocybin, but like RSO oil, we know is like super anti-inflammatory too. What makes these things effective in the inflammation world?
Good question. And it's very interesting. Like, anti-inflammatories are some of the biggest drugs out there, but when you look at how most of them work from a mechanistic perspective, they're targeting one thing. And so, like, some of the biggest drugs in the world are COX-2 inhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
Multi-billion-dollar drug, but it's essentially just.
And like, what's an example of that? Just real quick, just so I had COX-2 inhibitor, like aspirin, Tylenol, Advil.
Humira is the big. It was the
Humira. So that's an arthritis type thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's a COX-2 inhibitor, and one of the cytokines that we saw downregulated with psilocybin was COX-2. So instead of targeting that one specific inflammatory cytokine, what it does is it's hitting the receptor upstream and causing a cascade of downregulating inflammation. And so what that actually does is downregulates COX-2, but also interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-6.
Wow.
A whole array of these inflammations. So maybe it's not as powerful as Humira at downregulating COX-2, but because you're getting this broad spectrum downregulation of inflammatory biomarkers,
it's anything else.
Result.
Yeah.
Especially for things like PTSD, right? Like, the reason that I dug down this rabbit hole was because when we started getting these formulations sort of down, veterans would come to me absolutely suicidal, take a microdose. I'm talking like a milligram of psilocybin with some spices, and 90 minutes later say things like, "This is the first time in 12 years I felt joy," or "I feel like I did before the war," or they would sleep through the night for the first time in 10 years. And I'm just like, this is not placebo. There's something really real going on here. Now I'm to the point that I really believe we can screen individuals from a blood test and look at their inflammatory cytokines and predict whether this product is helpful.
And was
it makes everybody
Daryl
happy, but for some people, it is like almost a miracle, right? Like how
sounds like it.
A milligram of psilocybin could work.
Is it one package now that you're dealing with, say, the spices with the psilocybin, or are you trying to tailor that based on a specific patient profile?
So, very good question. There's a lot of these different TRPs that we studied, and at the end of the day, a combination of a bunch of them is probably the best. But when you're going into pharmaceutical drug development, again, it's very the more molecules you include, the tougher it becomes, especially if they view each of those as a treatment. You have to do all these different arms,
all these different trials.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we were very lucky that we found one molecule that it's already a pharmaceutical. It's called eugenol, and it's the active ingredient in clove. Also found in holy basil.
That's
and a bunch
cool.
of other things. But it's a very, very simple, aromatic molecule that, if you just go to Google Scholar and type in eugenol, like
all over the place. Yeah.
Antioxidant, analgesic, anti-inflammatory, all these things, right? So it works really well on its own. And this is where it's like combining it with the psilocybin was more than a 1 + 1 = 2 scenario.
That's what I was just going to ask. So it seems like the psilocybin acts as like a force multiplier on those things.
Well, one thing that we found that was really interesting when we started combining them in animals and doing basically transcriptome analysis of their brains, so looking at the gene expression profiles of different brain regions, was that the combination of psilocybin and eugenol actually was affecting corticotropin releasing hormone, which is in your HPA axis. So this is like what's controlling your adrenaline and your your fight response. Psilocybin alone does not affect that HPA axis. So when we included the eugenol to be able to now basically reduce stress is part of the reason that, especially over time, we see this significant downregulation in these inflammatory biomarkers. The reason that PTSD is so prevalent is just because we live in a fight or flight world. We're constantly dopamine, stress, go, and that is not what the human body was really designed for. It was designed to shift into that state when there's trouble. And especially within the military, they are super good at teaching the guys how to turn that on, right?
Sure.
get in that mode where it's do or die time and you're going to get it done, right? They did not teach guys how to turn it off.
Right.
They are figuring that out. I can tell you, I've been to a couple of military health conferences over the past few years where they're just doing things like empathy training for new recruits and finding like that alone, just understanding your emotions and being able to count to 10 and take a breath, you know, just like simple things like that are showing significant results.
Wow.
Just even
that is absolutely fucking breathtaking in simplicity, isn't it?
It is, you know, like, but at the same time,
I mean, wow.
Yeah, at the same time, you know, we've known for a long time that like drum circles are probably more effective than antidepressants in reducing depression and PTSD as well, right? But we're not prescribing drum circles to most of these veterans.
It starts to sound a little men who stare at goats, you know?
Right.
So yeah, it was just it was really interesting to start to see those results translate now into, you know, real action within the military, where they are, you know, it kind of sucks, but like they care way more about active duty than veterans, unfortunately.
Yeah, they do.
Like, it's just like it's a lost asset versus an active asset, and you know, can't really blame them for that. You would kind of think that, like,
yeah, I mean,
they should really take care of the guys that did.
They've got a reason to care about that.
We understand, yeah. So, but one of their biggest losses right now is really traumatic brain injury, and it's not generally from getting hit in the head anymore. It's not these large concussions. It's actually what's called like overpressure, overcussion syndrome from lots and lots of small little blasts, right? Constantly shooting, constantly being exposed to ordinances and things like that, shakes your brain, increases these inflammatory cytokines, the exact same ones that we see elevated in PTSD patients. And again, this isn't just me saying this. There was a study of 600 plus vets or active duty combat that came out of Walter Reed that showed that inflammation and oxidative stress was the basis for most of the PTSD symptoms. So it's not what causes it. The trauma causes it, but after that, they remain elevated, and that leads to all sorts of things like cardiac issues. You know, there's a massive elevated rate for cardiac issues in people with PTSD or traumatic brain injury.
Again, that makes sense.
Inflammatory cytokines floating around your whole body, kind of messing everything. So,
you know what's kind of messed up about that? And I'm a marketing guy for a long, long time. It feels like the marketing department of PTSD didn't want to share that part because it kind of like said, okay, there's like a lot of like normal things that also contribute to this. It doesn't have to be that your friend's head got blown off and right next to you in combat. Like it could just be these repetitive things, like you're saying. Like it doesn't, like, you know what I mean? It almost, I don't want to say normalizes it, but it makes you realize, I think you would approach it with a lot more caution if you knew, I think it could happen even at a daily habitual level. I don't necessarily have to be in the front lines of a war.
Well, but it's almost like it's almost like the NFL and their TBI things, right? They weren't trying to
same thing. We can go there, but there are many professions, let's just say, that are prime for PTSD, right? It could just be the straw that breaks the camel's back type thing, right? Where it's like one blow to the head, one buddy dying, even though you've seen 100 others already die, you know, like can cause that sort of, I don't want to say irreversible, but
entrenched. It's like it's with you.
This is chronic.
It was very interesting when I started looking at PTSD within the military. You know, one of the things that was really lacking, which was the same thing that we found when we started looking at professional athletes, was actually the camaraderie. You know, that was a lot of the trigger for guys, was like once they retired, and whether that was from the NFL or the NHL or from the military, you know, these guys have been with a band of brothers, a team with a mission their whole life. And when that gets taken away, that was often the trigger. Yeah. Right. It wasn't all the shit that they saw. It was now not being in that fight or flight mode, right? Because when you're in that state, you don't have time to worry about that shit. And so there's all of these professions, you know, ambulance workers, firefighters, doctors, nurses, they're all primed for for PTSD, right? And the more we can teach them how to shift from that parasympathetic or from sympathetic fight or flight mode back to the parasympathetic, calm, relaxed state, the more we will protect these people and they will be able to do their jobs. So whether that's a pill or a drum circle or yoga or meditation, there's literally hundreds of ways that you can reduce these inflammatory cytokines and reduce stress. Psilocybin just happens to be one of them. That's
a nice force multiplier for that. Yeah. I mean, I started a podcast to talk about ways to fucking chill my ass out. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm never ending on the list of things to do because, dude, we live in a fight or flight world, dude. Like, no questions asked. Every day I'm waking up, I'm ready to fight a fucking woolly mammoth or strap on a rifle. Like, I am like in fight mode every day of my life at work. And like, that's what over the years, that's why, I mean, I don't know if we talk too much, but I'm a huge microdosing advocate because it's a daily soothing. I don't even want to say soothing. That sounds analgesic, but I mean, like, it's a way to sort of check in on a vibration that you are otherwise not attached to. And if that makes any sense, like,
I mean, I like to call it sort of the water off the duck's back thing. It's like shit still sucks, but you're like,
it doesn't matter.
I can deal with it now. Yeah.
Like, we'll get through this, right?
Yeah. And it's just a matter of perspective, right? But when you're so tied up, there's no flexibility, man.
Duck,
yeah. You got no feathers, bro. You're just fucking, that's it. And you're out there. Yeah. And that sucks. And I think, so that's why I think it's awesome, because I'm seeing a lot of similarities like we were talking about earlier, right? Like when I saw the cannabis world start to go to those investor types, yeah, some of it was bad, but some of it was also good. Like, hey, people who knew how to do things were involved now. So things got actually like a little bit more responsible compared to the guy who was selling drugs out of his Fiero a minute ago and now runs a dispensary in Burbank, right? Like, I mean, that was happening all over the place.
And I do foresee, again, sort of the fork in the road for cannabis, which has always been there, is that like it will go back towards craft and local a bunch. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for anyone to create sort of the Coca-Cola of cannabis.
I don't think that's even legitimate
unless it's a pharmaceutical, which we've already seen with GW Pharmaceuticals, a massive, multi-billion-dollar exit. And there are other companies now that have taken sort of these very, very minor and rare cannaflavins and other, cannabinoids that weren't really bred for or weren't really doing much in the plant, but may cure ALS or some other
That's pretty cool
diseases. Those companies are going to have massive exits, and those products may help millions and millions of people, right? So, but
you might never hear about it unless you're in that world. Yeah. But I guess where I was going,
roads. Yeah. They're totally different roads.
Yeah. But I think where I was going with this was guys like you, people like Luis, there's a passion component to it, but there's also like, we're starting at the place that we know can be viable so that we can get to a place wherever we want to go. Like, financial viability buys you the option to do whatever the fuck you want later. But if you can start with something like, hey, if you can prove psilocybin is contributing to longevity, she could probably write her own meal ticket from, you know what I mean? Like if that's backed up.
Well, that basic research is really the opening the floodgate to everything else. Because but
if she started with a disease 1% of the planet had, no one would give a shit.
Oh, right? but you can't. You know what I mean? But the way the studies are formatted, the way you get into this, you can't say, hey, we're going to use this for this. You have to start with the stupidest things, like ending up killing a lot of fucking mice, so you can say that psilocybin is safe.
Well,
right.
And as much as longevity is a great space, it's sort of the new investment.
Right. That's why I said she's not stupid. Start where they're going to give you money. That's it.
It's a very difficult thing to actually prove or study. Like, how do you really do a longevity trial? Follow people for 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously.
And if it's working, you're not losing anybody. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So as much as we want to, say everyone should take psilocybin and live longer, we don't actually know that is the case.
Is it okay just to say I'm just going to take psilocybin? I don't give a shit.
Well, look, if you're looking if you're looking at it purely from a financial standpoint, no one cares. Because by the time it doesn't work, they're going to be dead. You've already had the money.
Right. Well, and this actually gets me to a very interesting sort of segue into like just the functional mushroom space, which I see taking a very interesting cannabis type approach, where everyone was buying this stuff just saying, "Oh, lion's mane is great and cordyceps is great," but like,
well, they got a wine made out of it now.
And it might be great, but we didn't actually know. No one was testing the medical metabolites, so it was like buying weed without knowing the THC content. And I'm not saying that THC content has been a great selling feature for the cannabis industry.
Yeah,
it's been kind of shitty because some of the best weed is 15 to 20% with amazing terps, and everyone just buys based on the high numbers, which were all inflated by labs and mostly lies, anyways. We go on and on about that, but one thing that has kind of happened with the new administration and their tariffs is that the functional mushroom space is now not just buying stuff from China and assuming that it has medical metabolites in it. As I can tell you, most of it doesn't. Most of it is completely void of cordycepin or the actual medical molecules that were in that fungus, and a large
interesting
is especially with the cordyceps. Is that because it's not wild harvested versus
There's many reasons. So some of it is cultivation, right? But no, cordyceps even just grown on rice is going to have pretty significant cordycepin in it.
Okay.
The problem is most people were selling it based on beta glucan, so they're trying to standardize because they weren't testing for cordycepin. There's no labs really doing it. They would extract the beta glucans and say, oh, look, it's got 36% beta glucans every time, so it's standardized. So the reality is a lot of people were just adding, increasing the pH and raising the temperature significantly to that extraction, which is burning the hell and destroying almost all of the medical molecules in there. And so now,
but it gets you to that.
It gets you to that magic number that lets you say it's standardized.
We're going to see a shift now where people are like 1% cordycepin or 2%, and so like people will now actually be buying based on those molecules. There's
on a real thing, But that goes back to what I was saying. That's smart because, and it goes back to the money part, right? I hate to reduce it to that, but like if doing that is more of a pain in the ass, but opens a wider door, which I think that in this case it would, then like a person trying to grow a company for long-term sustainability is going to obviously be snooping around that path, because that gets you down the path, like in a way that you can actually support yourself.
Again, we've been, growing functional mushrooms in America. You were competing largely with China with these massive, very As soon as their extract doubled in price, it became a competitive market for us, right? And so now we can release product that is tested and educate the market that, and also, just buy the competitors and order shit. And, not necessarily have to slander what
anybody in particular,
but just demonstrate from a scientific perspective that there is a right way and a wrong way to be doing these processes. So that is going to give the companies that I work with a significant leg up, I think, in the next little while. But up until now, the Chinese extract was so cheap that we couldn't even make the extract,
at that cost.
You couldn't even copy that.
So we weren't extracting. We were just, it was all powderized mycelium. And now people are finding that like a lot of the powderized mycelium doesn't really have much in it unless you supplement that with other things, right? So chaga, for instance, there's a paper published recently on chaga from wild harvested versus cultivated on all these different mediums, and the medical profiles totally different, right? Which makes a lot of sense.
Makes sense.
That makes sense. I mean,
any mushroom growing off of a tree is absorbing that tree, and birch trees specifically are loaded with betulinic acid and all of these other pentacyclic triterpenoids, which are extremely valuable medical molecules that are starting to be studied for anti-cancer and longevity and things like that. But if you grow that same mushroom on sorghum, there's no precursor molecules for it to convert into those.
Interesting. And you know what's cool about all this, though, is it all gets like it all comes down to sort of like what people can learn. And look, if it's cheap and somebody said, hey, cordyceps are going to make you live forever, and they go on Amazon and there's like one cultivated responsibly and done well and researched and everything, and it's $100, and they go to two doors down and they're like, oh, this one's only $40. I'm just going to do
You're
that.
buying
it's
the
like
40, yeah.
Yeah, it's the vitamin aisle at CVS.
That's that double-edged sword of, do you want it regulated?
Right.
Yeah, as much as THC sucked in cannabis, the buyers shifted to buying based on THC. At least it gave them a benchmark of something, right? So I think with the mushrooms, it will be much different, because the benchmark, it is the benchmark that you're looking for, is those medical metabolites. So, right? So
in this case, Daryl, do you think that's going to, I guess, halt the commercialization when we start bringing that back in, where we're getting to these craft harvesters of mushrooms? Or are we just going to say, all right, now we just know we need to use a lot of birch in this case for chaga?
I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question, because at the end of the day, like, we would talk about ethically harvested mushrooms, but at the same time, there's 8 billion of us. So
right.
And that's the thing, and if we all are going to use it.
And this is the same sort of thing that we ran into with iboga, when iboga, or like the Sonoran desert toad, right? Where as soon as the sort of North American community got a hold of this and what it does, the supply went to shit, right? Like it went from traditional farmers in Gabon harvesting a third of the root and leaving the plant alive, to just poachers ripping it out,
ripping the whole plant out. Yeah.
Right. So this is where I think we need to use the science to create something sustainable before we create a business. I'm very, very
well, because you can see it going down chain where now we don't have birch trees anymore.
Yeah, we don't. There's a lot. It's much harder for sure in Canada. Because once they cut down the natural forest, birch is not what they replant. It's slow and it's horrible. A lot, they don't use it for a lot of lumber purposes. So they are without those sort of old growth patches that are protected, you don't find these.
You're not finding it anymore. Right.
Yeah. So and again, I'm all for foraging for yourself, absolutely. But again, when it comes to commercial, I think we have to be a little bit more ethical when it comes to the planet itself, and say, okay, can we produce this in a fashion that is sustainable? And that could be anything from biosynthesizing it in yeast or an algae, to just figuring out how to grow it. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think with most of these mushrooms, it's not actually rocket science. It's because you've got all of the ingredients. So like it's kind of like if you were baking a cake, and part of the cordyceps cake is insect material. Maybe the incorporation of insect material in your mix, cricket frass or whatever isn't enough to boost those, right?
Frass.
Like,
we got to use the frass.
Which, again, like, is growing crickets sustainable? Yes. Okay. Well, that's
totally.
More sustainable than birch trees or whatever. They're harvesting moths from the Himalaya or whatever.
Right.
I think there's
exactly.
very simple solutions to a lot of these sort of conundrums when it comes to sustainability. Like, we have amazing technology now for just pulling the genes out of the iboga plant and making it in a vat, and someone should do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
we'd be talking bioidentical is kind of what you're saying.
Biosimilar, but at the same time, I don't want to do that at the expense of these tribes who rely on the funds from iboga, from cultivation, like that.
Sure.
How do we respect that and ensure that their supply still gets somewhere and is valued when we can produce it for 1/1000th price? Like, I don't actually have the answers to that, but I hope that we can find those balances as we try and create industries out of these traditional medicines.
Yeah, but like that, what you're talking about there, though, I think is the reason why I think the era of Cokes and such are gone, because the world isn't about broad spectrum to me as much anymore as it is about like super specialization. Like I want what I want that's good for me now, right? And granted, that's an evolution that I had to make in my own brain, but once you make it, and I think this is an awakening happening like globally right now, once you make that transition, there is zero chance of going backwards, right? Like, so I can't go to the grocery store and just buy ketchup anymore. Like I have to be like, fuck, I got to spend 30 minutes reading the labels so I can get the one that doesn't have, you know, like if I'm in my supermarket, no problem, I got it. But if they don't have that one, I'm like, fuck, I got to spend a minute. But like, I would rather do that and cancel my next meeting than buy ketchup that I don't want to eat.
I mean, ignorance is bliss, but it probably kills you faster too, right? So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I can't.
As we start to talk about longevity, and you know, one of the interesting places that I do see AI being useful is in personal health.
Yeah,
you know, because
absolutely.
You know, our medical industry is lagging behind. You know what I mean? It's always been strained. It's never been ahead of the game. It's always.
It only took 45 minutes to say AI this time.
It did. Yeah. I mean, that was a good chunk of time that went by.
Yeah, we want to have an AI button on here, Daryl, that says like, you know, somebody has to.
I was trying. We got a media section over here. We can add stuff, but I gotta find. We gotta pay somebody on Fiverr to make a nice little like an AI button.
I actually think I said it about raising money earlier. So.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Oh, maybe you did. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, funny enough, we have the AI tell us when to put the AI buzzer on, so we
can add it in post. We can let AI add it in post.
Yeah,
but yeah, personalized precision medicine is going to be a very interesting evolution over the next 10 years. Where again, you can prick your finger probably in the morning and drop a drop of blood, and it's going to say, "Eat spinach today." You know,
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
and we'll actually be maybe not 100% accurate, but contributing to your overall health. And I think one of the things that we found just by incorporating a bunch of these spices with people was that a lot of people don't have varied diets anymore.
No.
You know what I mean?
You mean chicken fingers and French fries are not a balanced meal?
Yeah, or like even the aversion to spice, you know, like
in
a lot of old cultures, like having capsaicin, hot pepper in food was very, very regular occurrence, right?
Sure.
And now it's completely avoided by a huge percentage of the population, who many have gut issues.
My kids won't have black pepper on food because it's too hot. I was like, capsaicin, like, come on, there's no fucking way. It would be, yeah.
Yeah, well,
my kids smell black pepper. Like, what is this?
Too, so hopefully they'll change at some point. And,
no, I know. I hope so.
I mean, there's other molecules too. It was just an example, right, of like how.
No, I'm just busting your balls because my son would rather not eat dinner than eat something with black pepper on it. Like it's an extreme visceral aversion to black pepper, and he's the good one. My daughter's worse. So like I can't, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just like there's not even a negotiation. When I was a kid, my parents were like, eat this can of tuna fish. I'm like, this is the most repugnant thing I've ever put near my face. I would rather starve. My dad was like, if you don't eat that in the next second, like, fine. Like, you know, my kids are like, nope, hard fuck off. Absolutely not happening. Not doing that.
Yeah, we definitely live in a different time. But one thing that I think over the last, let's just say 5 years, there's become a bit more of a disillusionment with the health industry.
Yeah.
And lack of trust and lack of, believing everything they're going to say.
Well, Daryl, I think you said the issue there. It's a health industry.
Yeah.
It's the second you make it for profit, it's not about you anymore. It's about how can you be exploited, you know? And I'm not a tinfoil hat kind of guy there. That's
well, you kind of are.
No, me neither. And you know, I don't want to shit on doctors either, because like I know
it's not them.
Some of my best friends are doctors that just like try every day to do the best that they possibly can, but they're also within a system that, as you said, values monetization over health. And so as people start to have that power, to be able to take that power back into their own hands, and I don't mean just by talking to ChatGPT for diagnoses. I mean, like, we will have really cool tech that actually tells you what's going on a molecular and genetic level inside of the body.
Yeah.
that will really help guide your purchasing decisions, if you will. So that might be an interesting application of
absolutely
of machine.
You know what though? What I like about your psilocybin stuff, by contrast to those sort of diagnostic tools, which I'm 100% with you, by the way, I want to own all of those right now. Living forever will be a lot easier if you're rich or at least reasonably wealthy. The psilocybin stuff,
but that's the case even now.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit.
Okay. Well, hold on real quick. Just to finish that, the psilocybin and cannabis thing introduced different avenues for that other than like a med bed or a fucking, PMF or, any of the mechanical health
or
things.
Or $60,000 worth of stem cells every 6 months or some shit,
So like look, the only evidence we have for longevity is by studying really old people. Everything else is hoo-ha and projection and assumption. None of it matters except people that live over 100. Those are the only populations that really matter. And when we study them, it doesn't matter their wealth or demographic. Usually there's very few specific things that they do, whether they live in Italy or whether they live in Japan, that have made them live that long. And so I think that's actually what the AI is going to do.
All right. And now I got to ask Daryl the pension fraud question.
Yeah,
have you heard? You've heard of this?
This is like Tom's favorite question.
I will get this dude on the show. But in poor record keeping and pension fraud, do we really have these blue zones?
Yeah, we're trying to get this guy on the show.
Yeah, and I mean that was the basis of his PhD.
I don't even
dissertation.
care about the zones though, but like if you go into an old folks home and there's like two people that are 120 and you interview them, one of them will have smoked cigarettes every single day and the other one not. And so that's not like what is the
connection
between these two people? And one thing for sure is not overeating. This is for sure one of the biggest things that we know, and we know this just from dogs and from other animals that we've studied. Like one of the biggest things you can do to shorten your dog's life is feed it too much.
Right.
And like they've showed like 3 cups versus 4 cups, you can actually like 4 years of dog life. What the hell? Like this isn't actually new. We've known this stuff for a long time, that if you only eat to like 80% full and have a balanced diet and like very sort of simple things like that will really help extend your life, will really help push back any of those sorts of diseases that are going to really shorten your life. Right. Now, again, I'm not saying smoking cigarettes, but I'm saying like, is it good?
Not even the good cigarettes.
I got it.
That wasn't my point there. My point was there will be some things completely dissimilar between these old people, but there's often things that are very similar. And I believe, most of it is stress and inflammation. Like inflammation, stress,
absolutely,
are the DNA killers. They cause double-strand breaks. So does the sun, right? So like, there's a number of things that you can do that are very simple. This is going to extend your life. And I think as we start injecting all these stem cells and stuff like that, it's that AI will learn and be like, that didn't actually work very much. It was your diet that made you live longer, or it was your
nothing sexy. That's the problem.
Yeah, 10 years to your life, like.
So this is funny that you brought up the sun, because like the biohacking movement, it ran away from me several years ago. Like I was just like, no, you guys, full crazy train. Yeah, everybody gets sun on your butthole. Yeah, I mean, you saw all this kind of crazy stuff happening, and I'm like, but I don't think it's big sunscreen. I don't think big sunscreen is lying to me here.
Yeah, right. Right.
That's just a weird thing.
Again, I think there's a healthy amount of sun and there's a non-healthy amount of sun.
Right.
And it's probably different for every single person. And being able to predict that versus just slathering on SPF 50 may really help people live longer and live healthier and happier and avoid skin cancer and things like that. Right. So that's I think where we're going, and I don't think you're going to have to prick your thing every day, right? Like at some point it will just say, it's all of your genetics and all the stuff going on with you. Like these are the people within your sort of similar
cohort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because it's, everybody is different. And so that's the hardest part of medicine, I think, is that it tries to generalize, and it has to save lives.
Well, sure. But
In a
that was that
public health kind of
personalization
mindset.
piece,
Yeah.
right? And where I was going with the money thing earlier wasn't necessarily that socioeconomic status as an independent variable meant anything to longevity, but more importantly, in this case, like I think you can buy in Japan right now those toilets that you piss into, or China, you piss into it and it gives you like a whole
It
test,
gives you urinalysis. Yeah.
like a urinalysis right there. And I'm like, okay, that toilet's probably like 10 grand. And if you could afford it, great. It will help you make better decisions, period. If you pay attention to it, that is.
But if you look at technology, it tends to filter down to the work. It just
takes longer.
And so when we're looking at longevity, we're talking about 100+ year lifespans now. So we'd actually have a lot of time for
that's a good point.
For people to go, wow, these toilets were an absolute waste, or everybody should have a toilet.
Right. Everybody should have one of these fancy toilets. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, man. I mean, I think if you look 100 years into the future, like, there was that episode of Family Guy years ago where the Stewie with the multiverse, and Quagmire comes out of just banging some chick. He's like, oh, time to take my nighttime aids. And it was a whole play off of NyQuil, and he just hits his watch and it goes in and it's done. And I'm like, that doesn't seem so weird anymore, right? Like that kind of feels like where we will be, because it's personal. Medicine isn't about masses, really, in specificity anyway. Generally, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see some pretty amazing developments. All that said, we've now used AI to predict tens of millions of new medicines that will act with these different receptors, and have absolutely no idea if they will actually work or what sort of toxicity they have. Meanwhile, we have identified less than like 1% of the entire fungal kingdom that exists. We've studied less than 1% of that on like actual understanding what the metabolites are in there. And one of the funguses I work with is this like birch polypore that was found in Utsi the Iceman's pouch, right? Like 5 years ago.
I love that fucking.
This guy was carrying that because it was antiviral, antibacterial, like it has all. So they knew this then, and now we're just starting to pull the molecules out.
Matt, that's at Watson and Crick's lab. He's at Watson and Crick's lab. $5 admission. Cold Spring Harbor. I've been to that. I was in that lab in high school sequencing DNA. I got to get up there.
So this is where it's like, as much as we're pushing forward, we still got to look back and figure out what we used to know, because we've lost so much of that knowledge by becoming, first of all, myopically focused on chemicals. That like chemicals are the solution, and that is another thing that I think is going to shift significantly, is that we're transitioning out of the chemical stage of medicine to what I call the biological stage of medicine. Right?
And what does that look like?
That's like stem cells, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Or reprogramming these viruses to like deliver DNA or whatever to specific cancers. There's very cool things where we're now using biology, even if it's maybe nanobots or whatever, but we are now using the biology of the body and our understanding of biology to cure biology.
Yeah.
100+ years, it hasn't been that. It's been, let's use chemistry. Let's apply chemicals, synthesize a new one every 25 years, get new IP, even if it works worse, it causes more things, right? Again, this has been sort of the approach, and I think that's going to shift significantly as, we get towards...
I love that, Daryl, because we've also
watch in the future, we'll probably have a bunch of stem cells underneath it that can produce 1,000 different pharmaceutical drugs based on you just telling them to release them into your bloodstream. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. So like the sky's the sort of limit when you look at biological approaches to biology. We can take, just as a really early example, we took a jellyfish genes and put them in all sorts of plants and stuff and made them glow green.
Made them glow in the dark.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, really, from a research perspective, it was one of the most valuable things we did in a long time. We could see where genes were, what, where specifically these proteins were being deposited and shit. Like, we couldn't do that before. So, the sky's sort of the limit when you look at what biology will be able to accomplish. But we
that's wild, dude.
We just
it's
don't
funny.
understand nature still. We're spending money going to Mars and we don't understand our own planet. Like, this is insanity to me when it's like, let's figure that stuff out.
But that's exactly the kind of root of what I'm saying, though. We are so blessed to live in a place where we got people that are super passionate about going to Mars and other people that are super passionate about figuring out fungus. Like, they're all important. But what I'm saying is, like, that's what's awesome about it, because even those are just two examples that I picked on because you just said those things. But but like, if you look at yours in the mycelium world, right? Like, I mean, dude, you could spend 30 lifetimes and still not even crack this thing by what now? Maybe that's different once we peel the mushroom back a little bit more. But dude, there's gonna be armies of people in very micro niche like things, and that is all very fascinating to me, because that's not how it used to be, right? It was
just with psilocybin, one molecule from one fungus, it took me 7, almost 8 years to get this to a clinical trial stage.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
And it is absolutely.
Now, does that go faster, your second, third, fourth, fifth version? Like, is this a process that's sort of like learnable, or do you kind of start from zero every time?
So, I mean, we sort of started from zero because when we combined it with eugenol and contacted the FDA, they saw this as a new chemical entity rather than a combination drug, which for us is very favorable. It gives us not only a stronger IP stance, but also made it so we don't have to include multiple arms. So we don't have to study psilocybin and eugenol individually. We just have to study the combination at specific doses.
Oh, cool.
But that being said, I couldn't piggyback on any of the safety data from either psilocybin or eugenol because of that. So now I have to redo all of the safety and talks. And despite the fact that we know psilocybin is extremely safe, tens of thousands of people microdosing all the time, no medical issues. Beyond that, we're approving 35 milligram doses given twice. So that's quite a bit. It takes a long time at 1 milligram a day to consume 70 milligrams of psilocybin, right?
Yeah.
But nobody has done a microdose study. So nobody's actually given it 1 milligram to people for 28 days, for 4 weeks in a row, and then studied if there's any side effects. So, so the FDA hasn't even approved a microdose trial past phase 1, really, because no one's done that study. They only did high dose. And so this didn't pave the way for me at all. So it was basically just like starting with a new drug.
To square one.
Right.
Yeah.
At square one, which in our case, we took, I didn't take any shortcuts. We put it on tissue cultures. We put it on, 3D intestinal cells and organoids, and then moved into animals and did a whole bunch of animal trials, caught up brains and figured out mechanism of action. And now we're doing all the safety stuff to be able to get into the clinic,
human trials,
right?
Yeah,
which is a horrible process. But again, I knew that the only way this is going to get to the number of people, especially within the military, that need it, is if it's an approved medication, right? So
no, you're definitely not wrong there.
Yeah, and now with the way that we're sort of getting in with the DoD, if they see results, they often take a small piece, we're talking about 2 or 3%, or
of course
investment in, to make sure that these products actually get to market.
I see.
Rather than just being bought up by a pharmaceutical company and put on the shelf, right? So that's another very interesting approach that took me a decade of working my way in.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But to be honest, if you'd asked me in high school if I'd be living on Mars right now or doing a psychedelic trial with the U.S. military, I think I would have said Mars.
Mars, for sure.
So we are making progress in both areas. My hope is we save the planet before we need to leave it.
I just went to an environmental summit meetup actually here in Baltimore, run by a guy who runs a fund on it. I think he's in his second version. And dude, I've never felt better about the future of the world than I left that place, because these people are like, I mean, the technology that these people are investing in and the rabbit holes they're down, I mean, as crazy as we get with like these conversations, dude, those guys are just as crazy on the environmental side. I mean, the shit going down in that sector is fucking mind bending. Like, I mean,
the one thing you can guarantee is sort of like the innovation of humanity and the will for us to survive
is deep.
It's so deep, and it's ingrained. And unless, you know, that comet coming is actually a UFO or something, we will survive. We'll figure these things out, you know, and the planet at the end of the day doesn't give a shit about us. It's going to do its thing with or without us. You know, we're probably overdue for an ice age anyways.
Yeah. Matt put me on to the apocalypse show.
Ancient Apocalypse right now. Don't watch it. You'll be in the whole fucking series before you know it. You're like, damn it.
Matt, I will tell you, I had Footprint of the Gods and Chariots of the Gods,
Chariots of the Gods.
Mixed up, and I was like, no, that guy's a fucking UFO lunatic, and you're like, no, he's a journalist, and I was like, oh shit, I got him wrong.
No, I mean, we talked about this the other day, man. Dude, Graham Hancock's been spouting that shit for 30 years plus, and he's just now finding out that he was pretty much right on a lot of things. I don't think it's everything, but talk about keeping your nose to the grindstone, man. This guy's been at it for decades, man, like decades. And I'm like, yeah, fucking world, we had all this shit. I mean, he's talking about the same stuff you are, Daryl. Like fucking ink.
How did you know? How do they know?
3,000 years ago in New Mexico, like 13,000 years ago in another place, right? White sands with footprints that are 23,000 years old. I was like, and human footprints.
Exact same thing when it comes to medicine. You know, when you look at ancient medicines, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Native American medicine, it was almost never one molecule.
Right.
It was never one plant. It was
Tom's PhD is in Chinese medicine. So
a bunch of mixes. And now we can very simply basically take stem cell lines, whether that's cancer cells or skin cells or brain cells, and you can drop these mixtures on and actually see if they work better, right? Like, and they do. And then, you know, start to pull apart the gene expression. You know, what are they actually doing? Which proteins are being involved. So this is where we're at from a scientific level, is we can now understand why Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine worked. Up until now, if a company thought it worked, they pulled one molecule out of it, again, usually created chemically synthesized versions of that and found the one that was probably the least toxic of those and launched it.
Right.
So that's sort of where we've been, I think, for almost 100 years now, with, you know, companies like Bayer and these big, you know.
You're preaching to the choir, man.
Daryl, I could literally talk to you about this all month, but I before we get out of here, I want to hear this fucking music thing you were doing. So Daryl and I, Tom, set the quick stage. Daryl and I are having a great conversation. Like, everything's cool. We're having basically a mini version of this. I'm exploring, you know, he's exploring. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, and by the way, I've got this album. I'm like, what? Like, what happened? Like, it's like almost like I had two different people on the line, and I was like, all right, we're going to have to come back to that. So can you just,
we can probably do a whole nother podcast on music.
We can do that if you want to.
We could definitely do that too. But for today, I got to know what's up with this album.
Today, I used to play heavy metal music, but about a year ago, I started playing country music. Not really
like pickup trucks and red cups and shit like that.
I'm in our studio right now, but basically, one of my son's friends growing up made a very successful music company, largely doing chill hop and lo-fi and sort of
nice
type stuff. And so I started helping them on the business side of things, and so had access to the studio and everything. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to release an album in a bunch of different genres. And I made a synthwave record and a dance album, and then started playing country and blues. And they were like, dude, don't just drop this into the ether, because it'll just get buried.
Yeah. And
you're too good at it. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Used to play in heavy metal bands, never really thought I'd do country, but like, I grew up in Alberta. You know, I come by it honestly. Definitely have done everything you can possibly do to a cow.
That's
in the
hilarious.
past, as well as, still farm hemp and I'm involved in being, coming by it honestly, if you will. I'm not just putting on the hat and being a poser and playing some music. But it's been quite the journey over the past year. I mean, I just got my guitar a year ago, May, right? So I'm just about a year into this. But
wow,
going into the
And you've already recorded an album.
Yeah, so I did a little thing myself in my basement just with a crappy guitar, and then it got
more than I've done.
Traction. Went down to Nashville, went to CMA Awards, and got signed. Went into a studio that did some Johnny Cash recordings, and had a whole band with live off the floor, and all that's in the mixing phase, and should have a live album coming out too. So,
fucking awesome. I mean,
that is
fucking awesome.
I never thought I'd do, but
for sure,
it's happening.
You know what I've noticed though, like really hyper creative people, and like after talking to you before, but certainly after this show, you certainly qualify as a really creative guy in my mind, because the molecular stuff you're thinking about, that's just fucking artistry right there. I don't care what anyone calls it, but for me, it's like just straight up art. And like music's a good counterbalance to that, right? It's a good other energy to sort of bring creative energy in a completely like visceral way. Cause I play banjo and piano when I can, but like, and I'm not aspiring to make an album, but there is something about that musical thing that really just makes creating shit a little bit easier, I think. Like, and I love the interplay.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because, like someone said to me, stop trying to do what you want to do and do what you're good at. And so,
yeah.
So when people are like, you're really good at this, like you're really good, I was like, okay,
I'll try it. Why not?
I'll give it a go.
Yeah. Give it a go. So we're going to give it a go. Maybe I'll be on tour with some famous country singer in the next year.
Listen, if you end up doing that, I'm going to have to ask you for tickets.
If it's Sturgill Simpson, please get him to come on a show.
Yeah, we're dying to have Sturgill on the show, man. I'd love to. He's somebody that I'd really want to talk to because he's so profoundly fluent in the psychedelic language that I'd really want to talk to that guy.
I kind of like him because he's an anarchist, but that's just me.
But like his songs just like nail it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I want to talk to that guy.
There's definitely some really cool, like sort of authentic country artists coming down the pipeline again, which is good to see. I'm not opposed to the whole sort of pop country scene, but it's a different vibe, if you will, than
definitely.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I was just talking about the fact that Sturgill's got a couple of those, like, I left my wife, or my dog's dead, or something.
They call me King Turd up here on Shit Mountain.
Yeah, but he's also got song about reincarnation and DMT tripping, and I'm like, okay, man, let's fucking talk about that, dude. Like, what? And it's not just casual. I mean, this guy's clearly got
reptile aliens made of light. Cut you open, rip out all your pain.
I mean, it's a whole situation going on. I just, and I love that. I mean, look, when country music has psychedelics jumped the shark, if country music is singing about it, I don't know. Is that
only if it's Kenny Chesney?
Okay, yeah.
But it's getting there. I wrote a song called "Bicycle Day" about an ass.
Oh, nice!
Oh, nice.
Maybe we won't release this.
That's fucking hilarious.
That's awesome, man.
All right, Doc, where do we send people? What do you want to leave people with? Where to find you? All that neat stuff.
You give us a SoundCloud too. We don't care.
Yeah. All of the above is
since we're on the topic, I'm doing the country music under Dwight Darrell. Dwight is my official first name. It's not the name that I have gone by, but that's another story.
Yeah, I hear you. But for your
sometimes you gotta own it at the end of the day, and Dwight Darrell is what I'm singing country under. So you can probably just Google that. Find. Our audience does know how to use the Google. Our psilocybin company, Good Cap Pharmaceuticals, is, as I said, actively moving into clinical trials.
Nice.
Hoping to receive grant money to afford a lot of that, but always looking for good strategic investors to come in and help us move that to the place that it needs to be. I think we've done a really good job sort of surviving, as I said, that psychedelic blip, not the bubble, but
sure.
It was just kind of a blip that took a lot of people out. We had the opportunity to go public and did not, and I think that's probably one of the reasons we're still around. So it was a very wise decision, but at the same time, it means you always got to go out and fill the coffers in order to do more things. Yeah. And so as we move into the clinic, things get more expensive. So we're always looking to sort of raise capital in that space. And then, I mentioned like birch polypore and some iboga, and there's a number of other molecules that are just getting to the stage that we understand what they're doing from a mechanism perspective. And I think, for me, again, it's locking down first the sustainability of production and then understanding the actual mechanism of action. So when you do go into selling the product, you understand what it's doing. And
right.
That's very important, because most things in life, the only difference between, a food, a nutrition, a medicine, and a poison is the dose.
Yeah.
Right. So we really try and understand that. And even when you look at things like these TRP receptor molecules, they're biphasic. And so that means at a very low dose, they do one thing. And then when you go to a higher dose, they do another thing. So you can think of capsaicin or hot pepper. You eat a little bit of spice, it kind of tingles. It's actually anti-inflammatory. When it flips into that excitatory phase, it hurts like hell and it causes inflammation. So this is where understanding the mechanism and the dose for these molecules before you just go start willy-nilly telling everybody to eat this shit every day.
Yeah, right.
Is important to me, not just from an ethical perspective, but also from a business standpoint, to be able to have a long-standing, sustainable company that's not just going to flop on its face when something goes wrong soon.
I love your perspective on that. I actually watched a video recently where a guy, I forget, it was one of these guys who sold his billionth company, whatever, and he's like 35. I was a little hatred of him, but I was also like, oh, that's kind of cool. Your message is kind of neat. But he was basically saying like, look, I don't understand people who want to like IPO today if you're sacrificing fun. So push the IPO out a few years, have fun. In your case, I think we followed this a very similar track in Head Shop. Yeah, we probably could have reverse IPO'd in a really super shady deal 10 years ago, and it would have been super financially lucrative, but it'd be shady as fuck. Push it out and do it the right way. And if it doesn't happen, then it wasn't meant to be. But if it does happen, it's so much better because it happened the right way, not some fucking bullshit back alleyway, And so your message really resonates with me because I totally agree. Could not agree more on like 100 levels.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Daryl, thank you so much. We will put everybody, all your links in the show notes, and thanks for spending time with us. Don't go anywhere when we say goodbye, but thanks again, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, Daryl, I think you made me want to go get some Vindaloo after this.
Yeah. So, all right, stay tuned. Take care, guys.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.